Today we remember, we say, the Holy Fathers, and there were 600 some of them, of the Seventh Ecumenical Council, which met for the second time at Nicaea to argue against those who wanted to break the icons. That's straightforward enough, but it's a lot of history. Does anybody know what that means? Anybody know the history? Anybody want to make a guess? Go ahead. They wanted to break the icons because they thought people were going to worship the icons. Very good, keep going. And then later on they said that the icons represent the person. Very good. So, this council met after 100 years of uproar and unrest. It met about the question of whether we are allowed to have beautiful churches such as this, whether we are permitted to have the icons in the church and to depict the face of God. Now the reason is that in the Old Testament it said, "You shall not make any graven image." And then the people who said we should break the icons said, well, we're not allowed to make an image of God, so we shouldn't do that, right? Okay. What the fathers of the church reflected on was this, and I'm going to translate it for modern terms. What if you could go back in time with a camera or a camera phone, right? What if you could go back to the day that Christ preached at the shores of the Sea of Galilee? Could you take a picture of him? Or is God like a vampire and you can't take pictures of him? They're supposed to be funny. You can laugh, haha, okay. The point is, if we were there, if we had lived in those times, Christ was God and he became man and he walked with human beings and they saw his face, they knew what he looked like, they shook his hand, they spent time with him, they knew him. If they'd had a picture, they would have taken a selfie with him. Finally, I get the laugh, okay? There we go. And because they remembered what he looked like, they could make the icons of his face, they could depict him. And that's important, because if God did not become man, then what makes Christianity different from any other religion? That is the point. God became man. Christ is God. He died and he rose from the dead, and because he was God and is God, we now have salvation, right? Complicated theology, yeah? All right. You get the basic point? We do icons because if we were back in time, we could have taken a picture of Christ, and they didn't have pictures then, but they had paintings, so they made paintings, right? Straightforward. Here's the other thing. And I'd like you all to think about this, because next week we're going to the monastery. And every time we go to the monastery, we have this difficulty because the monastery asks us to what? What does it ask us to do differently when we go and visit? Appropriately fine. It asks us to dress different, right? And we can spend a whole lot of energy saying, well, the monks think that we don't dress right, and what are we going to do, and it's not appropriate the way we dress, and blah, 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 blah. Let's set all that aside for the moment. Look in the icons. How are they dressed? What are they wearing? Anyone want to say something? Robes. They're wearing robes. For 1,800 years, Orthodox people wore robes. Does that mean that robes are the only thing that Orthodox people can possibly wear? And that if you don't come to church dressed like that, next time I'm going to send you out? No. There's something to say for fashion, and there's something to say for style, and for the mode and custom and culture of different times and places. But we have to remember when we go and visit the monks in the monastery that they have left their homes, They've left their families. They've gone to this special place where they have committed that they're going to try to live like Orthodox people for 1800 years lived. Right? And that's why they dress differently. And they ask that we do the same. For two reasons. First, because they're creating a world for themselves. A world that is absolutely and completely and totally devoted to God. And any distraction isn't bad in and of itself, but it doesn't make sense in that place. So they ask us to dress ourselves in a way that is not distracting, in a way that is like the icons, again, that has in mind that model. The second reason is this. It's possible that they know something we don't know. After all, they dress like this every day. They live like this every day. And in the same way, you dress different if you're going to go out and play football, as opposed to if you're going to go out and go to a party, as opposed to if you're going to go to work in a receptionist's office, right? And when you put on the clothes, it's like you're putting on a uniform, and you all of a sudden are thinking in that mindset. You know what I'm talking about? It's different to be in the altar just wearing pants and a tie and wearing the altar boy robe, right? You take it a little bit more seriously, right? Sometimes we struggle with this, but that's the point. We take different clothes and we wear them to remind us of basic points and realities. So when we go to the monastery, please don't any of you, as you try to find long enough shirts and pants for the guys and long enough skirts for the girls, and believe me, I know it's hard looking through the stores, finding something that is appropriate to the standards of the monks, right? But think of it as though you are getting ready to travel 500 years into the past. Think of it as though you're going on a field trip into the experience of the church for 1800 years. It's a chance to feel a little different, to look a little different, not because the way we live the rest of the time is wrong, but because we're Orthodox, because we are the family of the people in the icons, and we should know what their life was, and we should understand it so that we can live that life in the modern day, wearing what we normally wear as well. Does it make any sense? You bear with me at the very least? Just remember, when we say appropriate clothing, we're not saying that the clothes we wear every other day of the week is inappropriate. We're saying today, if you will, we're wearing a costume. We're dressing up to go into the time of Christ and to look at the icons and to live like icons for a little bit. Kala? All right. Not to belabor the point, thank you for your patience. Let's stand up and we will go for Sunday school.